the pharmaceutical industry has become very expert at working with physicians to develop ways of conveying that if you have a particular condition, and it may just be a life condition, not a disease, that it can be viewed as a medical condition, as a disease. We live in a society that's very receptive to finding quick, easy answers to problems. And so if you label something as a disease, we are very accustomed to believing that diseases need drugs, diseases can be cured by drugs, can be helped by drugs. So we do that flip in our mind that I'm feeling this way, translated down the line means I need this drug. And of course we have advertising, we have a very, very slick marketing operation that is infusing the public mind with images of situations and conditions and feelings that might potentially be diseases, and that there's always a drug that's equated with that disease. So we've become accustomed to thinking, if I'm feeling this way, rather than maybe I should seek out help some other way, our mind flips more quickly to maybe I need a drug. The industry, the players in the industry have become also very expert at working with government to sell them on the idea that their product is good, their product is safe, their product is needed out there. One of the things that we're seeing more of is prescribing off-label. So a drug will be approved for a particular indication, but rules for how physicians practice allow them to prescribe a drug if they think it could be useful in another indication, even if it hasn't been approved for that indication. Prescribing, and one example that we've worked on is an acne drug for facial acne. It was only approved for use as a last extreme kind of resort, and it also it's a hormone, and it also has the secondary effect of functioning as birth control. And so even though it was only approved for use for acne, it was always known that it worked as birth control as well. But because it wasn't approved for use as birth control, because you shouldn't be on it for very long, because it's a very powerful drug, it's hard on the liver, it wasn't approved for birth control. However, the company that manufactures it was very successful in sort of subtly reminding, not through direct advertising, but subtly reminding in other ways that it worked as contraception. And so you now have all kinds of young girls and women on this drug for contraception, not even knowing that it was never approved for contraception. Is in large part, reliant on fees that the industry pays to government in order to have government review the drugs. And we don't feel that that's a good way to do things. We think that it should be paid through general revenues from taxation, and that the company should be taxed a little more, so that money is part of a much bigger pot that is regulating all kinds of things, and part of a larger system of regulation and control at the federal government level, so that it isn't, company X isn't tied to this product, their money isn't tied to this product being reviewed by this branch of the government. Certainly the pharmaceutical industry that manufactures legal drugs has a lot to gain by having a population that is dealing with addiction, because the way things have evolved is that we use prescription drugs to help people get off their addictions. Unfortunately, often they just end up becoming addicted to something prescription. But so we have to think always in terms of what's in it for them. It's the same with cancer, right? This sounds very, very crass, but the pharmaceutical industry has a lot to gain from cancer increasing, right? Mm-hmm. They have a lot to gain by more people needing their drugs. So I think that it's a very, very gray, fuzzy distinction between that kind of connection and the connection between addiction and use of prescription drugs. I think there's also, as you said, a similar mindset. There is an openness to taking drugs if we already are addicted to an illegal drug. So we now have almost an epidemic of certain prescription drugs being sold on the street as for recreational purposes. Ritalin and oxycodone, all kinds of drugs that are supposedly controlled by our federal government and prescribers, doctors, are out there on the streets being sold at whatever price they can get. Mm-hmm. So those two worlds are already intermingling and connected with each other in those ways as well. What we're actually seeing is a growing community of people who can't get off prescription drugs, who are dealing with the same kinds of issues as people who are on street drugs, illegal drugs. And we're not training physicians adequately to help people who are, for example, having a very hard time on an antidepressant and want to get off of it, and find that as soon as they go off, they're a mess. They're in withdrawal, just like you're in withdrawal if you try to take yourself off heroin overnight. Mm-hmm. So there's big education problems. There's definitely money to be made by the pharmaceutical industry to keep people on the whole range of drugs.